Today, I'm setting up a portable ham radio system and a computer to go along with it. So I thought I would record a little video and show you what I'm going to do. So the first thing is the computer is a Raspberry Pi 4, which we'll put in a case to protect it, to put in with the radio. And then we're going to hook that up to power. And we're going to hook up to a radio, which I haven't even unboxed yet. So let's get started by putting the Raspberry Pi 4 in a case. I picked this case because it allows me to put all of the ports out the back side of the case. So all the wiring comes out the back, nothing comes out the side for a better mechanical configuration. To do that, there's an accessory board that plugs into the Raspberry Pi before it goes in the case. The case also has two positions to put heatsink on the RAM and the processor. We start out by removing the little tape that covers the heatsink material. Then the Raspberry Pi with the audio board goes in the case like this. Double check the alignment of the pins. Then we screw the two boards down inside. Now the bottom of the case is plastic, but the top is all aluminum so that it heat sinks it properly. In addition, there's a fan which is activated by the Pi to change speeds depending upon the temperature. So there's an application that helps manage that we have to install. And the little rubber feet. So there is the case assembled and ready to go. All the connectors out the back. There's a power switch. And then around on the front of the case and the bottom, since it's plastic, you can see the LEDs in there. And this is where the operating system card goes on. And we'll do that. We'll do that next. That'll be one of the next things we'll do. Case also has, if necessary, access to the I/O pins. In our case, probably won't be using that. So there is the first phase of this project. So the next part of this little project is to set up for powering the Raspberry Pi. Now, typically, the Raspberry Pi is powered by 110 volts AC. And if your radio station is in your house, that's probably a perfectly reasonable way of doing it. And then you can run that off of AC or on a UPS or whatever. But in my case, I really don't want to operate this way. I want to operate off of battery power. So this is one of the batteries I use. And the way I'm intending to do that is with this little device, which we'll set up here shortly. This is called a buck converter. What the buck converter does, it converts the input voltage, in this case 13 volts, down to 5 volts. and provides that output either on terminals or on a USB connector. So what I'll have to do is make a power pole plug to plug this into. So with the buck converter, we kind of want to keep that away from the radio and et cetera, because it may make a little electrical noise. So the way we'll do that is we'll use a USB cable. So plug the USB cable into the buck converter, and then plug that other end of the USB cable into the Raspberry Pi, and then this can sit near the battery to operate that. The other components that we have that's kind of peripheral to the system is, of course, I showed you the memory card, and then this is the adapter to put in the computer. So what we'll do here in a little while is we'll go over to the computer and we'll build that memory card up and make the operating system, and then add some really cool scripts to it to do a bunch of ham radio applications. This is a GPS GLONASS USB receiver, and that can either plug directly into the Raspberry Pi, or in my case, what I think I may do as a test is to use this USB extension cable and get the GPS receiver a little further away from the computers, et cetera, just to make sure it works well. Some of the hams have been successful having it directly in here. This is just a test for me to give that a shot. So that is the initial mechanical construction. There's one additional part which we will probably use. So I'm going to be operating mostly digital modes. And to get the analog data, input and output, analog out of the radio, we need to put a sound card on the Raspberry Pi. And a bunch of other hams have used this little Sabrient stereo sound adapter, which is this little guy. He's got microphone in and headphone out and USB. And of course, it can plug into the Raspberry Pi. But the problem is the Raspberry Pi's connectors are very, very close together. So I'm concerned that if I need to use 4 devices on the Raspberry Pi, we're going to have mechanical interference. So what I've got came with it is a cable, digital cable, that lets me plug it in like this, and then I can make the analog cables even shorter as necessary to reduce interference. This will let me manage that a little bit. So that's part of the experiment also. So there's the whole system. That's the whole computing infrastructure necessary for everything from logging to all the digital modes to radio control, etc. And the way we're going to operate this is a little bit unique. So we'll look at that as we move a little further along. So to continue along here, let's unbox this radio, show you what we're doing, and how it's going to work in the system. So this is the Xeigu G90 HF-SDR transceiver. So there's the little guy. This is a 20-watt out, basically QRP as we call it, HF radio, all band HF with software-defined radio capability. So it has a full digital display, and it's digitally operated. And a couple of things that they do that's really pretty nice. They provide you with the USB interface cable, which lets you update and program the radio, and also lets you do remote control. There's also a cable which is set up to separate this control head from the body if you want. So the control head can be separate, and then a power cord and a couple of other little knickknacks in here. One of the things that a lot of people have complained about is this power cord is 18 gauge wire. Now this is a 20-watt radio. As long as that power cord's short, you're probably okay. But we actually are not going to be using that. We're going to be doing something a little bit different. So that's the radio. That's the manual. Probably ought to read that in a little bit. So one of the things that bothers me a little bit about radios sitting on the bench like that is you can't see them, okay? Have an interesting gadget that they have developed that is set to hold the radio, and part of it is to cool the radio, but the other part of it is to make a very nice stand for the radio. So this is their stand. Okay, this is the fan control board. Okay, here's where the DC power cord goes, and notice that this is fairly short. And one of the nice things that they've done, while they have their little funny little connector there, it also gives us the ability to plug the power poles in directly. So the radio mounts to this, and it has these lovely little feet. So now the radio, when we get it bolted on, will go right on there. And so this is, several of the other hams have pointed this out. This is one of their favorite things, is a ground knob that actually unscrews. Well, they use the ground knob here to mount the radio on the stand. So now radio is on the stand, and then we plug in the power cord, and now that radio is almost set up, so we can pull out the little legs to stand it up. And the other thing that they've got here that they've included is a lovely little bracket to hold the radio down. So let's install that bracket very quickly here. So one thing I forgot to point out, here's a little piece of copper heatsink. So there's the thermistor, and it goes to the little fan control board. So that's how the fan control board manages the temperature of the radio. So now let's do this the right way. So we'll take the power poles from the battery and we'll plug it in, turn the power on. We have radio. So there we go. What I'll do is hold this display up a little closer so you can get an idea what that looks like. So, acid test. Everything seems to be just basically working. So the last piece of this puzzle that I want to show you now is the interface module that Xeigu has for their radios. This is the CT19 expansion card. And basically it's a little interface board that connects to the radio, can go out to their linear power amplifier, data audio out, AF in and out, and push to talk. And it comes with just the basic cables you need to do to get this all set up. Now, I probably will not use this to start out with because of the way I'm going to be connecting the radio up. But this would be a fast way to do some testing if I didn't already have that little USB card. So this is another little accessory that you can buy from Xeigu if you need it for your radio system. So what I thought I'd do next here is get set up to put the power pole connectors on a little short piece of cable. So we have wire stripper, cutters, wire, and the power pole crimper. So this is low power. Got these that are already bonded together correctly. And here's the little connectors. And I think that's all we need out of there. And maybe a foot of wire or so. Just a little. And this is much heavier gauge than I need for this couple amps. But there we go. Okay. So this gadget's just a little bit fussy. So the power pole connector goes in the crimper. Put the wire in the crimper. One done. Second one. And then we push it in this little gadget to latch it. And there we go. Took me a couple of times to get it right, but they're in. Now see if this has to be extended a little bit. There we go. Okay, that's plus, that's minus. Red is plus. And there we have it. Power pole, a little bit longer than I probably need, but power pole to the buck converter, which is going to give us 5 volts out to run the Raspberry Pi. Okay, I think that will be it for now. Next segment will be bringing up the Raspberry Pi, putting the operating system in, installing some really neat software, and we'll go through that over on the computer, not in here.